Hello, welcome to the channel Wise Stories. Enjoy watching.
The 24-year-old Julia was returning home in a bad mood. She had been working as a nurse in the clinic for a month now, and she could not get used to the environment of their ward. The job itself was boring, the same things every day. Human diseases and suffering did not add any joy, and her colleagues were unpleasant people who only talked about money, gifts, and expensive things. And there was never talk about the human soul, morality, compassion, or understanding. Julia hurried home because it was late. She stayed at work longer than usual, dreaming that very soon she would find a job she liked, and she would join a good team. It was late autumn outside, a gloomy, dreary time of year. She felt the same despondency in her soul. The last bus left long ago, and Julia had to go to the subway to get home. Walking down the steps of the underpass, she saw a skinny young man in shabby, dirty clothes. He was standing against the wall with his trembling hand outstretched, asking passers-by for money. Probably he is homeless, the girl thought. She had grown up in a poor family, without a father. Her mother worked 3 jobs to make sure they lived as well as everyone else. Therefore, looking at this man, she felt sincere sympathy, especially since his face was pleasant, with the right features. Julia took a few steps in his direction, and when she came closer, she got a closer look at his face. For a moment, she thought she had met her ex-boyfriend, Antonio, and she really liked him. They had dated for a long time, but had broken up in a very painful way. Antonio, Julia called out to the man. He looked up, but immediately lowered his eyes. It's definitely him. He's embarrassed to be here, she thought. Actually, she had secretly hoped to see him again. And now it happened. Julia loved Antonio, but her mother had a different opinion. She constantly talked about the fact that he was not her match, endlessly reproached that the man was allegedly poor, unpromising, and eventually Antonio broke up with Julia, being fatally offended by everyone. What a meeting, Antonio. I recognized you, and I'm glad to see you, Julia murmured. Miss, you are mistaken. Unfortunately, I am Miguel, the man said quietly and turned away. Julia looked at him and wondered, what if I bring him home to spite my mother and say he is my fiancé, and now he will live with us? Maybe after that, she would stop interfering with my personal life and looking for the right candidates for me, as she sees fit. The idea was wild, and Julia was already imagining what a horrible scandal would happen at home, but for some reason, she was in such a crappy mood today that she really wanted to make it happen by all means. She bought coffee and cookies and handed them to that homeless guy. He thanked her embarrassedly and greedily began to eat. Meanwhile, Julia started to ask him, Miguel, how did you end up here? Why are you not working? Where is your home? He replied with great embarrassment, well, that's how life turned out. I don't want to talk about it. My mother drank, and my stepfather used to beat me a lot. And then they kicked me out. So I'm wandering around. I don't have an ID, and without it, I can't find a job. I sleep wherever I can, either at a railway station or on heating mains, like everyone else. Suddenly, Julia felt deeply sorry for this poor man who, by the will of fate, was left with nothing. She immediately said the first thing that came into her head, come with me. I'll feed you dinner, you can take a shower, get some sleep. There's just one condition. I tell my mother you're my fiancé. Otherwise, she won't let you in. Just go along with it, okay? Do you agree? And if you don't like anything or get bored, you can leave anytime. No one will try to stop you. Please help me, I really need it. I'm sick and tired of my mother. She won't let me live the way I want to. She doesn't like everyone I've ever dated or even just been friends with. She expects me to meet a millionaire and marry him right away. The stranger hesitated a little and then said, and you decided to bring home a bum to make her angry? Well, honestly, it's not a good idea. Thank you for the offer, you have a good heart. You know, I think I'll accept it. To be honest, I'm freezing. At least I'll get some warmth. The girl's spirits brightened, and everything around her seemed to burst into bright colors. She was an emotional person, living full of feelings. She had never dreamed of a profitable marriage or a rich man, and she believed it was not the main thing between two loving people. Love and mutual understanding should come first. What if this is my destiny? That's what I should tell my mother. He was my fiancé. And then, Sarah. The girl took the surprised bum by the hand and confidently walked towards the future happiness in front of the shocked crowd. Julia's mother met her daughter and the stranger not so warmly as expected. She had long suffered from high blood pressure and had even had a heart attack once and received a disability. Doctors said she needed heart surgery to change a valve. But where could she find the money to do it? And honestly, she was not happy with her life. But the main thing she dreamed of was to see her daughter rich and happy. All her life, Jimena hardly made ends meet, taking whatever part-time job she could, just to have enough money for food and utilities. Eventually, her health was completely ruined. Naturally, she did not want Julia to repeat her unhappy fate. As a matter of fact, once, when she was very young, Jimena had suffered from great and pure love, but was left without a frivolous fiancé and with a huge belly all alone. Her ideal picture of happiness was her daughter living her best life in luxury and her husband being a successful businessman. Then she could die in peace. The woman was shocked when she saw some ragamuffin next to her daughter and thought, why did she bring him home? His clothes were dirty, his head unwashed, and he looked untidy. She had a whole range of feelings on her face, from shock to indignation. But Julia tried not to notice it and serenely introduced the stranger. Mom, this is my fiancé Miguel. We will live here because he doesn't have his own place. I hope you don't mind. Turning to the man, the girl said cheerfully, come in, don't be shy. Make yourself at home. The mother muttered angrily, but do not forget that you are a guest. My God, darling. When are you going to stop picking up all the rabble? This is a decent apartment, not a shelter for bums. The woman sighed sorrowfully and went over to her room. Julia fried potatoes and mushrooms, and they ate a hearty dinner. Then she took Miguel to the bathroom, put his dirty clothes in the washing machine, and showed him to his room. You'll sleep here, next to me, on the floor. I'll make a bed for you. Miguel enjoyed the hot shower and the clean linens and thought to himself, so cool. That's when you start to enjoy simple things. Who knew I'd have to experience all of this? He looked gratefully at Julia before going to bed, saying sincerely, thank you. From the bottom of my heart. Good night, my fairy. Miguel quickly got used to this place, and the kindness of the girl played a positive role. In addition, Julia was pretty, smiling, and friendly. The young people got along very well and talked for a long time. Miguel was trying to help out around the house. He fixed the laundry rope that had fallen off long ago on the balcony, tightened the squeaky cupboards in the kitchen, and fixed the rickety chairs. Julia was now happy to go home from work because she knew Miguel was waiting for her there. The feelings between them flared up quite unexpectedly. That night, they were watching a TV show, as usual, and were talking about everything. Suddenly, Julia grimaced in pain and cried out. A worried Miguel rushed to her. Julia, what happened? Are you in pain? What is wrong? The girl grabbed her leg. Ouch! I got a cramp. Probably because of work. Oh, it hurts. Miguel began gently massaging her foot, then the other, then her shins. It felt so good. The pain was gone, and the cramp had let her go. The man slowly began to move higher and higher, moved closer to Julia, and began to kiss her passionately and skillfully. The girl tried to control herself and whispered, Miguel, what are you doing? Aren't we just pretending to be a couple? Stop it. The man quietly replied, continuing to gently stroke her. I thought it was all a game too, but I fell in love. Julia, I want you so much. You're the best. I've never met anyone like you. If you don't want it, Just tell me, and I'll leave right away." But it was too late. Julia had already completely lost her mind, and both plunged into the abyss of passion, not noticing anything around them. Young people were absolutely happy, and even the eternal discontent of her mother did not irritate them at all. Miguel was so much in love with Julia that he couldn't imagine his life without her. And Julia realized that she had found her happiness. Here it is, true love. "I am so happy with him." She tried to convince her mother that Miguel was the man who would make her happy. But her mother was relentless. "Daughter, what are you doing? What kind of future would you have with him? He's a bum. No papers, no job, nothing. What are you thinking about? He shouldn't be here in a week." Even though Miguel helped Julia's mother in every way, took care of her, and did everything around the house, the woman still hated him. Every time she tried to say something unpleasant to him, something to hurt him. When Miguel still hadn't left after a week, the retired woman decided to go all in. While Julia was at work, she told Miguel directly and angrily, "I'm warning you, fiancé. Julia is an emotional girl and does everything that comes to her mind. She just decided to have fun with you. In fact, she has a fiancé. He's just away on a trip abroad. When he gets back, he'll kill both of you. Get out of here immediately if you want to live. Otherwise, I'll call Julia's fiancé today and tell him all about you." The mother knew that she was taking a sin on her soul, deceiving her daughter and her beloved in such a dark way. But the desire to see her daughter with the rich man prevailed. The man took these words seriously. He looked at the woman with eyes full of pain and suffering, then covered his face with his hands and wept silently. He did not want to believe it. Is it possible that Julia was so cruel to him? Because she said she loved him. Could she have betrayed him? It can't be. His whole body felt as if it were petrified. His feet did not want to move. He barely moved from his place and wandered wherever he could see, not even looking back. Unfortunately, on that day Julia had to stay at the hospital for the whole night because in the evening a 5-year-old boy was delivered with severe burns and she was asked to stay until morning. Julia called home and warned that she was going to be at work for 24 hours. Her mother didn't tell her anything about kicking the ragamuffin out. On the contrary, she rubbed her hands happily, realizing that after 24 hours he would already be far away. Miguel wanted to stay and wait for Julia to talk to her face to face. Heavy worries burned his soul. He wondered why and how it could have happened to him. But then his self-esteem kicked in and he decided, "I'll leave. I won't hurt myself or her. Let them live as they wish. What am I to them? I'm just a homeless man." When Julia finally came home and didn't find Miguel there, she immediately understood everything. She started screaming at her mother, "Mom, why? I know it was you who threw him out. Are you doing it on purpose? I love Miguel, do you understand? Where can I find him now?" Her mother started to defend herself. "Why do you always blame me for everything? Your bum left himself, I didn't do anything. But you know, I am not going to cry because he left. Fell in love? You'll fall out of love. Maybe you'll find a decent fiancé at least the third time. Stop bringing all kinds of trash here." Julia was shocked. She understood that Miguel could not just leave for no reason, because everything was going well between them. She cried, "I can imagine what my mother said about me. Where am I going to find Miguel now? I can't live without him." Hoping to find Miguel again and explain everything to him, Julia left and rushed to the underpass where they had first met. She turned her head, asking other homeless people and sellers, but they only shrugged. They had not seen the man here for a long time. The girl ran around the neighborhood for over an hour, thinking maybe Miguel hadn't gone far yet and was waiting for her somewhere nearby. But all was in vain. The man had disappeared. She suddenly felt so hurt, too. Why had he done that? Why didn't he wait for her and talk? He said he loved her, but he just left her for good. He believed that nonsense. So he was just using her? It was pouring rain outside, and sharp gusts of wind were tearing the last of the clinging leaves off the tree, but Julia didn't notice it at all. She walked, not seeing anything around her, soaked to the skin, and wept inconsolably. Maybe my mother is right, and I am really defective in some way? Stupid? Maybe I should just forget about love. Who needs it when it's nothing but tears? No one can be trusted. Julia got cold, soaked, and got very sick. For 3 weeks she had a fever and barely survived. In her delirium she kept calling out Miguel's name, calling out for him, looking for him. Julia fell into a deep depression. She went to work like a robot, and when she came home she immediately locked herself in her room and sobbed until morning. She did not eat well, so she lost a lot of weight. After a month the girl began to vomit a lot. Julia was a medical practitioner and understood everything right away. She was pregnant. The situation was a nightmare. The father of the child was a homeless man who had run away from her in an unknown direction. Her mother could barely tolerate her, and if she found out about the pregnancy, she would make her life miserable. What should she do? Julia did not know what to do and how to live, and most importantly, why. Every day, every morning and evening she went to the same underpass, hoping to see Miguel there again. Once she even thought she recognized him from behind, joyfully calling out, "Miguel! My darling! Finally, I have found you!" But a strange man turned to her and answered in surprise, "I am not Miguel, you are mistaken." In despair, Julia decided to do an irrevocable act. Well, she saw no other way out with a baby under her heart. And so, all problems will be solved in one step. Out of sight, out of mind. She went to the gynecologist and took the necessary tests. When she was already lying in the gynecologist's room, and the strict doctor, who was looking at her with judgment, took out all the necessary tools, she was suddenly struck with a terrible thought. What am I doing? I'm going to kill Miguel's baby. It's a part of him. His blood and flesh. This baby will remind me of my dearest person. How am I supposed to live after that? That's the meaning of life. Screw them all. The mother, Miguel himself, and the evil colleagues who openly laughed at me. I don't care. I'll give birth and raise this baby myself. No matter what. How am I supposed to live after that? That's the meaning of life. To hell with them all. The mother, Miguel himself, and the evil colleagues who openly laughed at her. I don't care. I'll give birth and raise him myself. Against all odds. Julia sharply pushed the shocked doctor away, got up, and said, "I'm sorry. I changed my mind." The gynecologist breathed a sigh of relief. Thank God. Julia came home after work, and the smell of fried fish hit her nose. She barely had time to put her hand over her mouth and run to the bathroom. She spent half an hour hunched over the toilet. The alarmed mother listened under the door, suspecting the worst. She screamed, "Daughter, are you sick? Are you poisoned? Open the door. It's not what I think, is it?" Finally, Julia was relieved and, exhausted, stepped out into the hallway. Her mother stood silently looking at her reproachfully, waiting for an explanation. The tired woman shouted angrily right in her mother's face. "Yes, Mom, I'm pregnant. I'm such an idiot. Yes, it's Miguel's baby. And you kicked him out. Now your grandbaby will never know who his father is. I hope you're happy. Isn't that what you wanted? I'm not going to have an abortion, don't even think about it. Now leave me alone, I need some rest." And she ran into the room, sobbing. Jimena felt bad and went to the kitchen to take sedative pills. She mentally scolded her daughter, "What a fool. She repeats my fate, stupid. She steps on the same rake. And now what? Another generation will live in poverty. I barely raised her, I thought, at least in my old age I will have some peace, and now I have to raise a grandson without a father." From that day on, Julia almost stopped talking to her mother, withdrew into herself, and never left her room. She tried not to cry. When it was absolutely impossible, she began to stroke her belly and softly sing a lullaby or talk to the baby. Strangely enough, this helped, and she began to calm down and fall asleep. Jimena regretted 1,000 times that she had lied about her daughter and kicked Miguel out. He really wasn't a bad man. He wasn't an alcoholic, he was hardworking, and he loved Julia very much. He could get an ID and a job, and he would have been a good husband and father. But now, it's a shame to tell anyone, daughter is pregnant by a homeless man who ran away somewhere. Oh, what a woe. The neighbors will laugh. It was scary to look at Julia. She vomited all the time and could eat almost nothing. At work, everybody made jokes and mockery, saying that she got pregnant and did not even know who the father was. The old nurses were especially creative. They were discussing all the details, spread rumors, and said very unpleasant things about Julia. The only person who treated her well was that gynecologist, Ramon Reyes. He always cheered her up and calmed her down. Sometimes Julia could not stand the gossip about her and would burst into tears in his office. He did not chase her away, did not scold her, did not preach, but locked the door and calmly said, "Let's have some tea and chocolate. Or something to eat. I always have something delicious for friends. Julia, you're in such a condition now that you react very emotionally to everything. And that's normal, it's because of the hormones. Try to distract yourself from everything. Take more walks and talk to the baby. Believe me, he hears and feels everything. When you cry, he feels bad there. When you laugh, he calms down in the womb. Believe me, when the baby is born, all those problems that now seem unsolvable to you will step aside. You will enjoy motherhood, and the rest is not so important. Your situation is certainly not easy. But remember, if you have nowhere to go or need any help, you can always call me. I'll help no matter what. You have my phone number." After these visits to this doctor, Julia wanted to live again. So another 2 months passed. Not a day or night went by that she didn't think of Miguel. No matter how angry she was at him, she still loved him deeply. She could close her eyes and there he was, his hands, his lips, his smile. She scolded herself, forget him. What an idiot. He left, and never thinks about you. He doesn't even care. If he really loved you, he would find you and let you know about it. And you've been crying for months. What did you want, anyway? You found him in an underpass, you took him home, and now you have to deal with it. Just accept that you're a single mother. So what? There are so many single mothers in this world. My mother raised me alone, too. I can handle it. Jimena knew that until she apologized to her daughter and told the truth, their relationship would not improve. She was sick of it. Julia had been as quiet as a fish since that last conversation. She has not reacted to anything. If Jimena tried to argue, her daughter either went silently to her room or outside. The woman felt intense guilt. She felt so sad and anxious. My God. How do I get through to my daughter? How can I beg forgiveness? After all, we are family. Everything fell out of her hands. She didn't want to do anything. She dreamed of hugging her silly daughter, kissing her on the forehead, telling her that she was no longer angry, that she would help, would not abandon her. Everything settled by chance. It was a day off. Julia decided to clean her room, washing the curtains and cleaning the windows, so she wouldn't have to think about Miguel. As she was cleaning the window, her mother happened to peek into her room as she passed by. Jimena thought her daughter was trying to jump out and commit suicide. And yet they lived on the 5th floor. The woman rushed to her in a second, abruptly pulled her daughter off the windowsill, hugged her, and cried out, "Julia! Darling! Don't do it! Do not jump! I beg you! Forgive me, I'm an old idiot. It's all my fault, Miguel left because of me. I told him you had a fiancé. And that you were with Miguel just for fun. I had good intentions. I thought I was doing the right thing. It's just that I can see that you are repeating my fate. Only now, looking at your unbearable suffering, do I realize what I've done. I've left my grandson without a father. I'm not angry with you. I love you. It's all right, we'll raise your baby together. Just don't do anything to yourself. Do you want me to help you find Miguel? Ask him to forgive me. Julia looked at her mother dumbfounded, tears streaming down her cheeks. Mom, what are you doing? I wasn't going to jump. I was just cleaning the windows. But I'm glad that you confessed and told the truth. You know, I really hated you a lot at first. And you know, there was a reason for that. But then I realized that if Miguel really loved me as much as I loved him, he would have found a way to see me, talk to me, and work things out. And since he left in silence for good, so be it. So don't blame yourself. Thank you for your support. Now at least I can rest my soul at home. Mother and daughter embraced for the first time in a long time and cried. But they were tears of relief and release. The heavy burden of resentment, anger, and misunderstanding was gone for both of them. They even seemed to be breathing easier. Jimena fussed and went to put the kettle on. Julia ate a pickle with sweet tea. Her mother recalled that when she was pregnant with her daughter, she used to chew chalk wherever she found it. They both laughed. Now Jimena was preparing diligently for Julia's delivery. She took out an old, dusty sewing machine, rummaged in her trunk for a length of soft baize cloth, and remembered her youth. Within a week, she had made baby aprons, singlets, and beanies. She washed and ironed them and stacked them neatly. Julia came home from her shift and was stunned. She timidly took a tiny singlet in her hands and unwrapped it. Tears of tenderness came to her eyes. Mommy, thank you. It's so wonderful. The baby will have such tiny little arms, just like a doll. I cannot believe it. Mom sighed and replied, Yes, sweetie, we'll take turns at night. At first it will be hard, but then we'll get used to it. We can buy a used stroller and crib. You'll get maternity pay, enough for the first time, and then maybe I'll take care of my grandchild, and you'll find some part-time job or go to work early. That's okay, we'll be okay. Julia felt much better mentally. Now she knew that her mother was with her, she supported her, and she could tell her what was bothering her. And still, as soon as evening came, Julia became sad. Tears came up and squeezed her. She remembered how she and Miguel cuddled on the couch, watching a series about the police, and then slept together, cuddled up to each other. He gently stroked her shoulders and her hair and whispered words of love. Oh, Miguel. How could it be? Where are you now? Maybe you are traveling the world and have forgotten me long ago? How could you? I believed you. You'll never know that you're about to have a baby. These thoughts were swirling in my head all the time, tearing her soul to shreds. But soon something happened, something that rocked the city and turned Julia's life upside down. That morning she had some kind of premonition. Something turned over in her soul, and her heart fluttered. All the time she was mixing up everything on the shift and could not understand what was going on with her. The patient's tests were almost mixed up, then she almost took the wrong patient for an x-ray. The head nurse scolded Julia the entire day. What is wrong with you? Pull yourself together. Think about work. When Julia came home from her shift, a motorcade of several fancy black limousines pulled up to the house. Jimena was just watering the flowers on the windowsill and was very surprised. Look, honey, some important people have come to see someone. I've only seen such cars in movies. I wonder who they came to visit. It seems that no rich people live in our building. Suddenly the doorbell rang. Surprised, Jimena went to open the door. There were 3 bodyguards and a respectable, well-dressed young man standing on the doorstep. He smiled and asked, Good afternoon, Jimena. Is Julia at home? May I come in? The bewildered woman nodded and silently let the important guests in, wondering who it was. The visitors went into the hall, and Julia came out to them. Suddenly, this young and stylish man ran up to her and embraced her. He was so excited. "Hello, my love. Here I am, your Miguel. Are you happy? I am back." To the man's surprise, Juliet angrily pushed him away and shouted, "Miguel, why did you suddenly decide to come back? You gave up on me so easily, believing what my mother had told you. You didn't even bother to talk to me in person to find out if it was true or not. Where have you been all this time? In space? On the moon? Why didn't you ever let me hear from you? What is this limousine masquerade? Was the image of the bum just a masquerade, too? Have you been lying to me all this time? Who are you?" The man turned sad, sat down on the couch, ordered the bodyguards out of the room, and began to tell, "Honey, don't yell, please, just listen. I beg you. Yes, you're right, I'm not a bum. I'm the son of the millionaire Crespo. You've probably heard of him. We have 2 airlines overseas. So, obviously, I grew up in luxury and wealth. I went to a private, expensive school, and then I graduated from the University of Economics in England. It seemed to me that I had my whole life ahead of me. It was wonderful. It felt like I had rose-colored glasses over my eyes. And suddenly, I lost my mother. Even though she was very carefully monitoring her health, was examined in the best clinics, and had a perfectly healthy lifestyle. Can you imagine? She got out of the car and walked to the supermarket, and right there, she was hit to death by a drunk driver. It was terrible grief for our whole family. I barely remember the funeral. It didn't seem to happen to me. At first, my dad grieved a lot, but he and I somehow bonded. It was easier to go through such a bereavement together. But my father shocked me when, 6 months after my mother's death, he brought that nasty stepmother, Camila, into our house. I immediately had a bad relationship with her. She acted with impudence, domineering in our house, began to throw out my mother's belongings, and took away her photos, although I have forbidden her to do so. The result was a wild scandal. I thought my father would support me, but no. He defended this scum and made me a condition: either accept it or leave. This is ridiculous. Throwing your son out of the house because of some obnoxious woman. I couldn't get through to my father. It was like he couldn't hear me. It was as if Camila had bewitched him. So I got angry and ran away from home. Except, as it turned out, I was not adapted to life in the streets at all. What had I seen before? A luxurious life, high society, everything in abundance. I had no idea people could starve, look for food in garbage cans, or sleep on heating pipes. In my mind, they were alcoholics and the dregs of society. I was so scared. I was wandering around, and I was so stupid I didn't even take my ID from home. Having communicated with many homeless people, I realized that a lot of them are ordinary people. Educated and well-read, just with a crippled fate. Getting to know you, Julia, was the brightest episode in my homeless life. When Jimena kicked me out, I rushed in frustration to the train station, jumped on a passing train, and was as much as 300 kilometers away. There I was begging for alms as usual, when suddenly I was picked up right there by my father's guards. As it turned out, Dad got very sick, caught a cold, and went to the hospital with pneumonia. So his viper mistress immediately began to divide millions behind his back, rubbing her hands. She never even visited him in the hospital. That's when the father remembered that he had a son. He felt ashamed, decided to find me, and apologize. After all the time before Camila came, we had been living fine. We understood each other without a word. So my dad and I made up. I'm a manager at his company now. I told my dad about you, Julia. He didn't mind us seeing each other. So I came to pick you up. Pack up, let's move to my place in the capital. I'll introduce you to my father. Julia sat, frowning and silent, then suddenly said, I'm not going anywhere, Miguel. First, my mother is sick. And I won't leave her for long. And secondly, I'm pregnant. What do you think of that? The man's face changed. Pregnant? I don't understand. Who's the father? Julia could not stand it, slapped him across the face, and shouted, "Idiot! My fiancé, who I supposedly had. Isn't that what you're trying to say? So you believe that I'm a whore, sleep with anyone, right? Then go to hell. Go away with your millions. I hate you." Julia ran to her room in tears. A furious Miguel said, "Seriously? All right then. Goodbye, hysterical girl." And they left. Jimena realized that this whole mess was all because of her stupid words. She was the one who had planted the seeds of doubt in Miguel's mind. How was she going to make it right? It was obvious that they loved each other, but they were angry and quarreled as if they were enemies. 2 weeks passed. Julia was in despair, sobbing day and night, and scolding herself, "Why did I do this to him? He came back to me, and I slapped his face. I'm a fool. All because of my stupid pride. I should have hugged him, kissed him, told him how much I loved him, how much I missed him. What did I do? Now it's really over." Jimena spent a long time thinking about how to correct her mistakes, and she made up her mind. She found out where the Crespo lived and began to pack for the journey. She lied to her daughter. "Julia, I'm going to the nearby city, to the hospital with Aunt Renata. She says a very good doctor is coming there, a professor. I'd like to have a consultation with him. Maybe I can avoid the surgery, you know. I'll show him all my checkups and see what he says." "Sure, go, Mom. Can you do it yourself? Or should I come with you? For support?" Jimena waved her hands. "No, darling. You've got morning sickness, you shouldn't travel that far. No, stay at home, rest, and take care of my grandson, but do not cry all the time. It breaks my heart to look at you." The capital stunned the old woman. She struggled to find the Crespo family's mansion outside the city, having spent the last of her savings to pay for an expensive cab. It was beginning to get dark outside. There were dense forests all around. Jimena got scared. How would she get home? There was no money left for the return trip, and the bus stop was 3 kilometers away. The woman knocked on the gate. Huge dogs barked in the yard. A guard came out of the guard booth and reluctantly asked, "Who are you looking for? You must have the wrong address." Jimena, taking a deep breath, answered, "I would like to see Mr. Crespo, or his son Miguel. I have something important to discuss with them. A personal matter. Tell him so." The guard contacted the owner by walkie-talkie, "Viviano Crespo. There's an old lady here to see you. She says it's personal and important. Should I let her in?" The other end of the line said, "Let her introduce herself." "Who is she? I do not know any women." The pensioner said, "I am Jimena, mother of Julia Hernandez, Miguel's fiancé. Tell him I'm not going anywhere. I'll freeze here until morning, but I'm not leaving until they talk to me." The guard said all this to the owner, who replied with a sigh, "All right, walk her to my office. I'll be right there." Jimena entered the lavishly furnished office timidly. A stern, imposing man wearing glasses was sitting at the desk. He gestured for her to sit down. Then he coughed and asked, "So, madam, what brings you here? Remind me, who are you?" Because I did not quite understand the words of the guard. The woman replied, "My name is Jimena. I am Julia's mother. You see, about 4 months ago my daughter took home a homeless guy, said he was her fiancé, his name was Miguel, and he would live with us. Well, obviously I didn't take it well. Julia is a modest and quiet girl. She has only had one man before, Antonio, and that was a year ago. But she's a good girl, she works as a nurse in our local hospital. Anyway, certainly, I was totally against this relationship. What happened between Julia and Miguel was intense love, with all its consequences. Everything was going well with them. And I ruined everything. I couldn't accept the fact that my daughter was living with a bum. I myself had a hard life. I did not want the same for my daughter. Then I lied to Miguel to make him leave. But now he doubts Julia. I have no idea what to do now. Don't think badly of me. We don't need anything from you. We can take care of the baby ourselves. But I just want to ask your son to forgive me and explain to him that what I said was a lie. Julia doesn't have a fiancé, and she never did. I'm so sorry that two loving hearts are fighting because of me. And I feel sorry for my grandson too. It turns out he will not even know his father. Please tell Miguel what I said. And if you can, please take me to the train station. I have to go home. Because Julia doesn't know I went to see you, she'll be worried. The man took off his glasses, twirled them in his hands, then said, "So I'm going to be a grandfather soon?" All in all, the picture is clear now. All in all, the picture is clear now, more or less. Now I understand why he's been so gloomy and depressed lately. Don't worry, I'll talk to my son. The chauffeur will take you home. In a good car, it will only take an hour. Jimena sighed with relief. Thank you for not kicking me out, listening, and understanding. You are a very calm and reasonable person. Not like all of us. We messed everything up first, and then we started thinking about what we had done. With a relieved heart, Jimena drove home. Now her conscience was clear. She tried to do her best to reconcile Miguel and Julia and to atone for her sins. When Miguel arrived from work, he was so tired that his only thought was to fall on his bed and sleep, but his father was already waiting for him in the hallway. Miguel had remembered this look since childhood, his eyebrows pulled back and his glasses on his forehead. It meant a serious conversation. And so it was. Viviano said to his son, "Let's go into the office, son. We need to talk." Miguel sighed and reluctantly followed, wondering what he was going to be punished for. As soon as the office door closed, his father began to speak sternly. "What's going on, Miguel? My son is a scoundrel, and I don't know anything about it." Miguel opened his mouth at this turn of events. "What are you talking about, Dad? What had I done? The company is fine, and the contracts are fine. I checked everything twice today." The man got even sterner. "I suppose you know a woman named Jimena. She came here today, crying, begging your forgiveness. She told me that you got her daughter pregnant. What does that mean? If it's true, why are you hiding? Is that what real men do?" Miguel immediately turned gloomy and frowned. "Dad, I don't know what to do. You know, Julia is good, kind, I love her. She helped me and gave me shelter, otherwise I would have frozen there, in that underpass. But her mother, she's like a snake. She constantly told me that I was not her mate. And then she kicked me out. Said that Julia was with me for fun and that she has a fiancé. So I was offended. And when I decided to come to Julia last week to make up, instead of being happy and hugging me, she slapped me in the face. Is that normal? And for what? For a simple question, who is the father of her baby? Well, I have to be sure that this is my baby. You never know." The father shook his head. "Oh, Miguel, you are so stupid. I'd love to punch you in the face right now, too. First of all, how could you blindly believe a woman's gossip and not double-check it? It was necessary to wait for Julia and talk to her frankly. Secondly, what would 99% of girls do if they knew that you were a millionaire's son? Right, they would do everything possible. They would pretend to be perfect, just for you to be by their side. Wouldn't they? What did your Julia do? Slapped you in the face and kicked you out. Right? What does that tell you? That she doesn't care about your money or your status. The truth is more important to her. If she wasn't afraid to bring a bum home and fall in love with that bum, it must be real, you know? You shouldn't doubt her." And Miguel got completely lost. Right. Why didn't I think of that? I had already exhausted myself. Eaten from the inside out. I'm so in love with her and so jealous. I don't even know who I'm jealous of. I feel so bad without her. I feel that she is my soulmate. Since I met Julia, I do not want to look at anyone else. What should I do now, Dad? She's too proud. She probably won't forgive me. Viviano laughed. Fool. Her mother said that your girlfriend cries day and night. She does not want to see anyone. She is washed in tears. And you say, she won't forgive me. Just talk to her heart to heart, sincerely, hug her, offer her to be your wife. No woman would refuse such a thing. Don't even think about depriving me of my grandson. The inspired Miguel bought a huge bouquet of scarlet roses, an expensive cake that Julia had dreamed of trying, and rushed back to her home. He timidly rang the doorbell. Julia's mother came out. She looked very bad and staggered slightly. The man said hello. Good afternoon, Jimena. Is Julia home? I need to talk to her. The woman suddenly cried, Hello, Miguel. They took Julia to the hospital half an hour ago. I called an ambulance. She had a stomach ache and she was bleeding. I hope it's not a miscarriage. It's all because of her nervousness. She's been driving herself crazy. I wanted to go with her too, but the doctor talked me out of it. My blood pressure went up. So, I stayed at home, but I'll go and see her tomorrow morning. I hope everything's all right. I'll never forgive myself. Miguel went pale and changed his face. I'm such an idiot. It's all my fault. Which hospital? Tell me the address, quick. The man drove at full speed, not knowing the way. When he burst into the emergency room, the nurses were shocked. The son of Mr. Crespo himself had come to them. They often saw Miguel on billboards and magazine covers, and they recognized him immediately. The man almost shouted, What room is Julia Hernandez in? Is she okay? Where's the doctor? She's my fiancé. Staff ran and bustled. Everyone tried to calm Miguel down. An old tired doctor came out of the staff room and said sternly, What are you doing here? This is a maternity hospital, not a market. Julia Hernandez is in room number 5. The situation is critical. There is a threat of miscarriage and heavy bleeding. We're doing everything we can. Are you the father of the baby? Can you donate blood? It would help her a lot since she's losing a lot of blood. Miguel nodded his head. Yes, I would do anything as long as Julia and the baby are okay. I'll pay for any medications. I beg you, let me see her for a second. I need to tell her something. When she hears it, everything will be all right. I promise you. The doctor wanted to refuse, but he looked into the man's eyes, full of pain and despair, and changed his mind. Okay, just a couple of minutes, and I'll wait for you. Miguel quietly entered the room. Julia lay frightened and pale as a sheet and seemed almost not to breathe. The paramedics were bustling around her, giving her injections and drips. A man walked up to her, got down on one knee, and whispered, Hello, my little bluebird. Forgive me, was so stupid. I love you more than life. Don't say anything, keep your strength for you and our baby. Can I put my hand on your belly? He gently put his hand on her lower abdomen, gently stroked it, and whispered, My little baby, it's me, your daddy. Don't get rowdy in there. Your mother and I love you and we are waiting for you. We need you right on time, strong and healthy. A nurse came and gestured for him to go. Miguel gently kissed Julia and left. And something unbelievable was going on in her soul. An hour ago she wanted to die, and she didn't really care what would happen next, and now everything inside was filled with warmth, happiness, and incredible light. She wanted to live so badly. To love Miguel, to raise her son. She finally closed her eyes and fell asleep, knowing for sure that now everything would be all right. She was not alone. Miguel was with her. Miguel gave his blood. The poor man sat on the couch in the waiting room all night, not sleeping a wink, and prayed as best he could. Lord, take everything away from me. The money, the company, the cars. Just let Julia and the baby get well. I'd rather be sick than let anything happen to them. I love them so much. In the morning, he was touched on the shoulder by the same tired doctor. He had already had time to change his clothes and was about to go home. Looking at the poor man, he felt so sorry for him and decided to cheer him up. "Miguel, your girlfriend is fine. The bleeding was stopped and the threat of miscarriage was stopped. But she will have to stay here for a week or two to be under medical supervision. Be careful, do not let her get stressed. Take care of her, women are vulnerable, especially in this condition. If you want, you can pay for a single room with a TV." A happy Miguel shook the doctor's hand and thanked him. "Thank you. Thank God, everything turned out all right. If something had happened to Julia or the baby, I would have never forgiven myself. Can I see her now?" The doctor replied sternly. "The visiting hours are displayed in the waiting room. Do not break the schedule. These rules are for everyone. Is that clear?" Miguel arranged everything, and Julia was transferred to a single comfortable room with a TV. She was still not allowed to get up, so the man tried to spend every free minute with her. He massaged her feet, stroked her belly, and brought her fruits, juices, and vitamins. Her mother also brought homemade soups and steamed vegetables. Julia couldn't be happier. "Mom, Miguel, you bring me too many treats. I'll be as chubby as Winnie the Pooh. Moreover, the toxicosis is already gone. I have a wolf's appetite. I'm eating like crazy." After being discharged from the hospital, despite Julia's protests, Miguel moved her to his mansion. And he and his father took care of Jimena's health. They sent her to a health resort for treatment and paid for a month's stay there. The woman was happy. She had never been on vacation in her entire life. Whenever she had a vacation from work, she immediately looked for one more part-time job, and this happened year after year. And she had never had enough money to go to resorts. The resort was on the seashore, the scenery was magnificent. The staff treated her like a queen. She was an important guest. The woman walked a lot, took pictures in front of the mountains and the beach, and sent them to her friends. They were burning with envy. The whole neighborhood was talking about it. "Look how lucky Jimena is in her old age. She's having a royal vacation and getting free treatment. It's all thanks to Julia." We all scolded her, saying, "She is so stupid, hanging out with a bum." And the bum was not an ordinary bum. Just like in a fairy tale. Julia left for maternity leave and decided to have a farewell dinner at the hospital. She brought cake, juices, fruit, and champagne for her colleagues. No one made fun of her anymore. No one was gossiping. But everyone was fawning and trying to please her. What if Julia complained to Viviano Crespo? Then the hospital should expect all sorts of revisions. Julia felt great outside of the city. Fresh forest air, walking along the shady paths, relaxing in the gazebo, and sound sleep. She recovered a little and looked prettier. Her cheeks became pink, her belly was growing by the hour and looked like a big watermelon. Miguel took care of his beloved. He was so happy. He booked the best clinic for her upcoming delivery, kept asking her how she was feeling, and worried about her health. Viviano didn't waste any time either, ordered new furniture, and equipped a fancy baby's room. But he kept everything a secret from the young couple. He didn't show them anything. He was afraid it would be a bad omen. Jimena recovered, and when she went to her clinic for a checkup, the doctors were shocked. All her indicators were so much better. The doctor was amazed. "Jimena Hernandez, now you can be sent to the Olympics." What was the name of the resort? I will recommend it to all my patients. When Julia and her beloved went for their last ultrasound before the birth, they were shocked once again. Dr. Ramon Reyes began the conversation with a sly smile. "Julia, I see that things are going well in your personal life. Is that your husband? You look great." The woman glowed. "Yes, this is Miguel, the father of my baby. We are fine." Ramon Reyes continued. "Then I have wonderful news for you. Mister, sit down, just in case. A frightened Miguel began to mutter, "What's wrong with the baby? Tell me." "You have twins. A boy and a girl. Congratulations." Julia opened her mouth. "Twins? I had 3 ultrasound scans during my pregnancy, and you did not say anything about twins. How is that possible?" Ramon Reyes continued, "I saw both of them. I just decided not to scare you for a while. If I had told you about it right away, would you be willing not to terminate the pregnancy? You were scared and crying all the time." Miguel jumped up and down with joy. "Wow! I can't believe it. 2 kids at the same time. That's great. It will not be boring." Shocked Julia replied, "Yeah, no one will be bored. Now I understand why my baby was so rowdy. And my belly is already as big as 2 watermelons. And it turns out there are 2 babies. Will I even be able to give birth to them myself? Or do I need surgery?" The gynecologist laughed. "Well, here we go. The typical woman's fears. Of course, you will give birth without any surgery. All your vitals are normal, your pelvis is wide, you can do it, don't worry. You just have to come to the hospital a week earlier, as in the case of twins, labor is often premature and rapid." Everyone at home was shocked. Jimena secretly crossed herself and thought to herself, "God, it's a good thing Julia and Miguel made up. I can't imagine how she and I would have raised 2 children together." Happy Julia snuggled up to Miguel and dreamily replied, "You see, when I first saw you in the underpass, for some reason I immediately thought, this is my destiny. And I was right." Miguel kissed Julia and replied, "I also thought about it so many times. If I hadn't quarreled with my father, we would probably never have met. I don't regret that we met. My only regret is that I was such a fool and made my sweet girl so anxious that we almost lost our babies. I'm sorry. I know for sure now, whatever the circumstances, we should always just sit down and talk. We still have a lot to learn as we have just started our family, but we have our whole lives to do it." Julia could barely make it through her pregnancy. She couldn't see anything beyond her nose behind her huge belly. When Julia was taken to the hospital, Miguel was worried to death, rushing along the corridor. Jimena was also praying. Looking at his daughter-in-law's huge belly, Viviano could not understand how women could give birth, especially 2 babies at the same time. Fortunately, everything went perfectly. Julia insisted that Ramon Reyes deliver the baby. She trusted him. She knew he would not do anything wrong. When she was wet and exhausted, they gave her 2 crying babies. At that moment, she cried with happiness. The emotions were so strong. Julia felt like the happiest woman on the planet. Ramon Reyes leaned toward her and said slyly, "Do you remember what I promised you? When you become a mother, the happiness will overflow you so much that all the other problems and challenges will become very small and unimportant. So, am I right?" Julia smiled blissfully. 200% right. Thank you for everything, Ramon Reyes. You're more than a doctor, you've become like a father to me during this time. Thank you so much. There were so many people at Martina and Martine's christening. Media, reporters. They invited Viviano Crespo and all their friends. It was an incredibly beautiful grand party. Everyone admired the little angels smiling peacefully in their cradles and wished the happy family happiness and prosperity.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.